This episode of Sacred Sons Podcast is brought to you by Vivo Barefoot. Let's walk in a good way in the natural world that surrounds us. Vivo Barefoot is the official shoe of Sacred Sons. And Vivos are more than just amazing footwear. It is a beacon of natural health and lifestyle, proudly certified as a B Corporation with a singular mission to rekindle our bond with nature, step by step, person by person. Vivo Barefoot footwear embraces the principles of wide, thin, and flexible design for optimal foot health. If you come to any of our events, you will see our leaders rocking them. And here's an exclusive offer for our Sacred Sons community. Get 15% off your first Vivo Barefoot order with the code, all caps, Sacred Sons. Go to vivobarefoot.com, find the shoe or boot that you are looking for. At checkout, use the code, all caps, Sacred Sons for 15% off. And join us as we reconnect to nature and ourselves. Much love, family. Peace, family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons Podcast. Brothers and sisters, how can we make sense of it all? Everything that is happening, everything that we're holding, everything that we're witnessing. Today, I am happy to be bringing through someone who I deem to be a sense maker. I see him out there analyzing, going into the emotions, into the depth. His name is David Sutcliffe. He's a somatic therapist. You may know him from his most recent Andrew Tate interview. You might know him from giving advice from his car. If you're an old school head, you might even know him as an actor, playing a humble and honest father on the Gilmore Girls back in the day. I know him from Ceremony. I know him as a sun dancer. I know him as a human being that has compassion in his heart and who cares for others deeply. And today we're going to find out if any of that is true. Please welcome our guest, David Sutcliffe.
Happy to be here with you, Adam.
Thank you, man. Honestly, I've always wanted to do a little podcast with you, have a conversation. It's true, we did meet in Ceremony, back in the day. And actually, we sat in a men's ayahuasca ceremony together.
That's right. I'd heard about you, and I knew you were sitting up there, and everybody told me that I had to meet you, and I finally did at a men's ceremony. It was great. And I remember we had a pretty deep conversation afterward. I got to know you, and I could see why everybody was like, you got to get to know this guy. And then our paths crossed a little bit later, right with the beginning when you were putting together Sacred Sons, and then we've bumped into each other through the years, and it's been awesome to watch you do your thing and watch Sacred Sons grow, and in some small way to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think not even a small way. Some of those early ceremonies were massively transformational in my own embodiment, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I find that, I would imagine that's true for you in your own way.
Yeah, those ceremonies in Joshua Tree were transformative for me. I mean, they were the beginning of like a real 4-year journey. I went pretty deep into the plant medicine world, ended up living with a Shipibo maestro shaman in LA. He was a guy that I became friends with, but I was in the field of it for 2 years living with this guy, and sometimes just on a random Thursday night he'd be cooking medicine for the weekend, and he's like, I need to try this out, you want to sit with me tonight? So it was that kind of experience, which was a real privilege. So I got to know the medicine in a pretty deep way, and but yeah, those ceremonies in Joshua Tree really opened me up to a lot and changed me, and had a huge impact on the way that I think, particularly about the work that I do.
Yeah, about the work that you do, and does it impact the way that you interface with the world at large? So just we are days after a botched or failed assassination attempt on President Trump. We were literally an inch away from civil unrest and potential chaos, as it were, or at least the loss of life, in front of the world. Do you think back in those days we were doing the work to prepare us, for the resilience of what's necessary to meet what's actually going on in our fucked up world?
Yeah, I think so. I've thought a lot about that. Why did I leave acting and Hollywood to pursue this kind of strange somatic therapy practice? But I was obsessed with it. And then to go from that to into the plant medicine world, and now into a pretty deep study of the Lakota way. What is it that's pulled me? I think there is some kind of force that is calling forth leaders to help, so we can help understand, give context, help us move through whatever this thing is that we're moving through. A lot of people talk about it in a lot of different ways. But it's some kind of evolutionary process, and with all evolutionary processes, all change, external, internal, there's always a degree of chaos and madness and uncertainty and fear, and I feel like unknown, a lot of unknown, and I feel like I've been training for that. So everything that's going on, I feel pretty anchored in it, and I don't want to say that I understand what's happening. I think that's impossible, but I have some orientation, something to hold on to, some frame that I'm looking through that keeps me grounded in all of it.
Yeah. As a therapist, what's your tool? What do you go to stay grounded through anxious times or turbulent times? What's and maybe you have your own outlet through therapy. I don't know. What's the tool?
Well, there's two things. I'm and I promote this with all of my clients. I'm an avid walker. I walk.
Yes.
40, 50 miles a week. So I got to get my walk in. 7, 8 mile, 10 mile walks on the regular, if not every day. That keeps me literally grounded.
Do you walk and talk? Do you walk and meditate?
Sometimes I walk and listen, podcast, audio books. Sometimes I walk just in silence and just, meditate or, see what comes. But I love it. It is always a kind of meditation. It always sets me straight. So that's my practice. I don't work out and I do all the regular things. I'm a regular meditator. But I also have the good fortune of the profession I'm in. I know a lot of my colleagues are some of the best therapists out there. So if I have a problem, I have a lot of great people on speed dial, and there's a real shorthand, and they know me so well that I can kind of figure it out very, very quickly, get to the root of what's actually happening, come back into reality, into self-responsibility. And then from that place, it's much easier to solve whatever problem that I'm facing in that moment.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you have the modern therapy training and the somatic training, and you're also preparing to go to Sundance. Mm-hmm. Like you're also, it's what an incredible thing to live with a Shipibo practitioner.
Yeah.
And you're steeping yourself in these cultural ways. What is it? What is it that draws you to this?
That's a great question. I mean, originally what drew me to the Lakota was the music. I was just obsessed with the music. I heard it in ceremony one night, in a Shipibo ceremony. These practitioners from Vancouver, from British Columbia, they were also sun dancers, and they sang some Lakota songs in between the Shipibo chants, and I was just mesmerized. And then I got back to LA and heard about this Lakota song class, started learning the music, started going to Sweat Lodge, eventually went to a Vision Quest, and Eventually went to a Sundance, supported, and just, slow and steady. There's something in all of it that I guess it's my way to God. I didn't really have a way to God. Coming out of my somatic training, so much of the focus is on the psychology, on the mind, obviously, and on the body and how they're related. And there was a kind of element of spirituality, but it was indirect, or it just wasn't confronted head on, wasn't integrated with it. And but this opened me up to all of that. And ayahuasca was the first thing. After my first ceremony, I was like, okay, God is real. There's definitely God. There's an intelligent force. I don't know exactly what it is. You can call it God, whatever.
It's not a belief either. It's like, no, I've had an actual experience.
Exactly. And I guess I was maybe looking for some, religion or some vehicle, some frame to develop that spiritual practice. And I was just drawn to the Lakota. There's something primal about it. There's something for me that's very deep. It speaks to me. It's raw. It's cruel also. It's firm. It's harsh. It's masculine. And maybe after the 5 years of therapy training, which was generally, kind of feminine, that there was a kind of a masculine force that I was looking to deal with, and it just a different way, a different understanding, a different approach to making contact with the divine. And again, all these, it's impossible to describe exactly why or how, but there's just something in it for me that just resonates. And, I love it. Like I said, I'm getting ready for Sundance next week. And yeah, it's a hard 8 days, but it's so awesome.
I know Sundance is private, and it's, they keep it sacred in terms of the ceremony, but are there any stories, or is there a piece that you could share with us to know about the harshness that you've actually experienced or endured?
Well, they cut into your skin with a scalpel and then, pierce your chest. It's like a moment. And then you're tied to a tree, not hanging. Some people hang. So there's a literal, cutting of the skin, but just the 4 days, no food or water out in the hot sun. And where I dance in South Dakota, it can get hot, high 90s, low 100s. So it can be brutal. And also, sometimes, not all, there are certain chiefs who can be pretty harsh. And I resisted that at first. Those old school football coaches that are kind of assholes. And but then I started to see the method to their madness. That once they kind of hit you with a little bit of cruelty, and you have to take it. You just have to roll with it. And once I learned to roll with it, it's almost like a test. And you just got to be like, oh, okay. You just take it. And then once you take it, it's like you realize it's okay. And then they kind of lay off. And they're just checking you out. They're testing you. And at first I didn't like it, but now I do like it, and I see the goodness in it, because life can be cruel. Life is unfair. Shit happens. And, you can be resentful and judgmental and resist it, or you can just be like, okay, this is what's happening in this moment, and I'm just going to roll with it. And I'm not going to make that person bad. I'm not going to get all upset. I'm going to this is part of the practice. This is part of my prayer. And can I stay with myself in the face of this energy that's coming at me that feels kind of, harsh or unconscious or insane?
You're not getting it at your local coffee shop.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Do you feel like that energy of testing, that masculine edge of, order. Let's just call it order.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is, right? They're bringing order in a way that's unfamiliar. Do you feel like that's missing from the journey of men? Not only the spiritual path, but just societally. I feel like that energy has been deemed potentially toxic.
Yeah, no, I think I was one of those people that thought that it was toxic because I'd been hurt by it, and certainly there is a totalitarian type masculine energy that is unconscious and has the intention to demean or shame, and you can feel they're taking out their own unresolved pain and anger onto you, and nobody wants to experience that. And I think that is toxic and that is abusive. However, there's the story of Job in the Bible, and there's like life is that way sometimes. And so the father is there's no father that's perfectly conscious. And so sometimes we have to, as men, deal with the unconsciousness that lives in the world and not let our heart go become cynical or hard. And can I stay open to that unconsciousness without like demonizing? And I think because I think in some way, men, fathers are the representation of God on earth, and part of the journey, the spiritual journey, at least for me, is to be in relationship with all of it, all of the light and the dark, and to trust that there's actually goodness in it. Like, we could talk about, bring this to politics. It's like, because this is like Trump. It's like he's this, he's kind of a madman, but there's something in there that's like important. Like you can't have somebody running an entire country who's not a little mad and doesn't have an edge and he's not a killer.
Especially for a guy like that who's not a politician.
That's right.
To want that job.
Yes.
And to want that attention, you have to be insane. They label it like he's a narcissist and all this, but there's also, man, especially after what's happened recently, you got to go, damn, he's protected. He's got some spiritual protection, bro. There's something to be acknowledged there. In all of the court cases that that don't stick, in things that have turned out to be lies. You're an original MAGA guy
back in
some
the day.
ways.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? I don't want to delve into conspiracy, but like, where's the goodness in Trump? What do you see?
I think he's got his flaws, obviously, and I think he's a salesman. So he lies as salesmen lie in a persuasive way. I don't feel his lies are necessarily malicious, but I'm not gonna defend him in that way. I think he's a wizard. I think he's a real life wizard. I think wizards exist. And I think he's one of them. Obviously, he seems to be able to bend reality to his will. And he's fearless. And he says what he thinks, generally. And I found that to be refreshing, and, there's ample cases of it. But, I was an Obama guy for 8 years and ultimately was disappointed. I felt that in the end, the whole thing was kind of I want to say he's a fraud, but I felt the fraud of everything, the government, and just that this is all bullshit. And then when he came in and upended everything, I was like, oh, this is what we need. We need the bull in the china shop, because he's an imperfect man, but he sees something. He understands the game and he's calling it out, and he plays the game right out in the open. Everyone else is kind of playing a game, but they pretend they're not playing it. He plays it right there out in the open, unapologetically, and I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on RFK? I'm I've never really talked about my political affiliations here on the Sacred Sons podcast, but I'm a registered independent as of maybe 4 years ago. I'm for a third party, like an actual viable third party.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, I don't know if the solutions are actually there. You know, I'm also like, we all as individuals have to focus on what we're creating, and as families and as communities. Like, that's really where the impact is felt.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, you have to act locally. I mean, that's the game. I try not to get too involved in all of it. But I like RFK. I think he's a sensible man, probably the most sensible guy, and agree with most of his politics. And I love the way he articulates everything, and just his general demeanor, and he feels like he's somebody with a good heart who understands what's going on and what's needed. Just in terms of the politics of the moment, I think you need a psychopath like Trump in office to deal with what's happening. It's the force that I think of the deep state corruption. It's like if you're going after, Pablo Escobar, are you going to send RFK or are you going to send Trump? Do you know what I'm saying? You're not sending RFK. You want RFK around, but you got to send the cop who's almost as bad, but not quite as Pablo.
in the Cuban Missile Crisis, you want JFK, right? If there's a nuclear war being threatened, I think I want RFK. If there's somebody with a finger on a button to deliver a death blow to us all, I'd rather that be RFK out of the given choices.
Yeah, in that scenario, I can agree with you. But dealing with the corruption that exists, and currently what I see in the U.S. Bureaucracy, I don't know. I just think you need a hammer. Sometimes, he's the man. To me, he's the right man for the job right now. I wouldn't want Trump to be president all the time. I'm not looking for King Trump, but I think he's the guy for the job right now. But maybe that's just my own. I have my own biases and projections. And
so, did you ever have a time where you delved deep into conspiracy? How do you deal with your own curiosity and finding out things that were once deemed conspiracy are actually true? Or I feel like reality is shattered in many ways as of 2016, really, it started to unravel. Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened to me. I would say the reason that I became a Trump supporter was not because I was all about Trump. It was just I would hear the things that they were claiming that he said, and I was like, "What? Jesus! Oh my God! I can't believe he said that." And then I would go and watch the thing that he said, and I was like, "That's not what he said at all. That's like a lie." And that started adding up. And then I started seeing all my friends on Facebook, like, buying into these lies. And I started saying, like, hey, that's not actually what happened. And these lies are dangerous. Like, this guy's not Hitler. I mean, what the fuck? And then I started to get a lot of pushback, like hard pushback from friends, like telling me that I was crazy. And I was pretty sure that I was seeing things clearly. But I was alone in it, and then and I predicted that he would get elected, and he did get elected, and but it was heartbreaking for me because I lost a lot of friends, there was a lot of judgment, and it was actually a real test for me. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of, that I kind of stuck to my guns. Like I held on to myself, like I stayed with what I saw and what I believed in the face of a lot of people telling me that they thought I was wrong or bad for supporting him. And then obviously when COVID hit, pretty early on, I was suspicious of the whole narrative, and just in real time, because I was a believer in America, and why wouldn't I be? And then seeing over time the things that were deemed conspiracy theories suddenly come true or be proven true,
I went through a period of real despair, to be honest with you. I was living up in Idlewild during COVID, and it took me down. It was really disheartening and scary and frustrating and sad. And like anything, it was, like I was shattered. And then I had to like come to terms with like, oh, this is what the world is. This is how it's working right now. And I don't need to be cynical about it. But accept it and grieve the loss of what was there and is now gone, and move on in living in this new world.
What did you lose?
I think a kind of innocence.
Yeah.
Like that people were looking out for our best intentions, or had good intentions, looking out for our best interests. That generally, our leaders were noble. And again, it's not even a judgment about the individuals. It's more just once you understand the system and you understand the incentives of the system, it's set up to be corrupt. It can't not be corrupt based on the incentive structure. And I think it's all inevitable. These 250-year cycles, rise and fall of the great powers, the fourth turning, whatever, the return of Pluto, however you want to think about it. I think there's patterns in history and they just play out. And I think I just came to terms with that. Okay, there's something going on. I don't understand it. This is all inevitable. This is a cycle, some kind of evolutionary cycle. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's no right or wrong to it, really. My mind can assign right or wrong, and I can take a side, and that's fine. But on a higher level, there really is no right or wrong, and just to be with it and make my peace with it all.
Yeah, I get that it's not right or wrong, but if we lost something, what did we replace it with? What did we gain, or what did you gain to allow you to be here now? I see you in a thriving situation currently based on, you're newly married, and we could talk about relationship, but like, what did you gain through that dark night, through that despair?
Well, I think I gained some wisdom, certainly, and I gained the fortitude of standing firm in what I believed, and losing friends. And there's a lot of people out there, and I was somewhat of a public figure because I was an actor. It's like, oh my God, Christopher from Gilmore Girls is a Trump supporter. He was at January 6th. Oh my God. And it was a whole situation.
Really?
Well, I wasn't at the rally. I was at the event, but I didn't go down to the Capitol.
Okay.
So I wasn't at the Capitol, but I was in Washington for the speech because I just thought, this is a historic event, and I don't know, I want to be there for some reason. I was drawn to it, so I went there, brought my camera, shot a bunch of footage, and then obviously all that January 6th stuff went down, the quote unquote insurrection. And then there was
another thing riddled in conspiracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And it's like many things have come out to be true or, not true, or it's an incredibly confusing time, I would say.
Yeah.
And so to come out of that with wisdom, and also I'm hearing a little bit of discernment that you came away with.
That's a good word. Discernment.
Yeah.
And then also, it kind of coincided with the what I was learning on the Red Road, which was there is no separation between the light and the dark. It's one thing, like that nature has no judgments, no preferences. And the moment you accept that, you're free. That was the message that I got on my first vision quest. And it was like this, it just blasted into my brain, into my consciousness. And it's not an entirely original thought, but it was the way I experienced it was original for me, and it went in, and I understood it, and that was profound. To just like, okay, like this is the non-duality. This is Mitakiasen. All is related. Everything is one thing. There is no separation. And can I exist in that? Can I accept that? Not only that, can I love it all? Right. Accept is one thing, but can I love it? Can I embrace it? Can I see God in all of it? The perfection in the madness, in the chaos, in the cruelty. Can I be with all of that? And that's what I'm interested in. That's what I try to practice in my own life. It's what I try to embody, and that's definitely what I try to teach.
Yeah, I mean, acceptance. Gosh, I don't know if it's possible to love it all. I mean, maybe Jesus was able to ultimately. But to find the acceptance, and also to find the acknowledgement of our own roles and behaviors in it.
That's right.
That's the flip for me. It's like,
well, then can you love yourself there? Can you love yourself in the place of your own shadow, of your own participation, of your own cruelty, of your own desire to separate? Can you love yourself there? Can you accept yourself there? Can you accept your best friend there? Can you accept your wife there? Because everyone got it. Yeah. Can I love my wife in the fucking deepest part of her darkness? It's like, I wish it wasn't there. I wish she was sweet to me all the fucking time. But she's not. She's human. And sometimes I piss her off, She has a reaction.
Yeah, you give a lot of relationship advice as a newly married man. What are you learning? What are you learning about what it means to be a husband? What's useful for some of the men out there who are dealing with loving their wife or their partner in their shadow? How do you build such resilience? Does it really take being tied to a tree for 4 days in the heat in order to be able to show up in my relationship? Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say that being tied to a tree for 4 days in the heat is easier than any relationship. That's the break from relaction.
Wow.
They're fucking hard, man. That's why I avoided them for so many years. I grew up my mother, my parents split when I was very young, and then my mom remarried and then split again when I was a teenager. And it just left me there was so much pain attached to those experiences. For me, relationships just equaled pain and suffering. And so it took me a long time to figure it out. The thing that we're working on right now, which is interesting, is really the polarity piece. I told her that that I'm going to provide, and that she can work, but she doesn't have to. I don't want to have to think about or worry about money. That I'll handle that, and that's been felt very liberating for me in some way. I'm taking on more responsibility, but it was hard for her, because she grew up with her dad telling her, like, you got to be your own woman and you got to make your own money and don't rely on a man. I think a lot of women got that message, understandably so. So it's interesting for us, the two of us, to navigate that dynamic, and then what comes up for both of us, and how we negotiate that, and how in kind of in a modern way we take on these very traditional gender roles.
What do you do if you're polarized in the same direction? Like, I don't know if you have a piece here, but like, if a woman is really in her masculine, it's kind of like what you were tending towards, and maybe the man is in his feminine, or they're both vying for that number one spot, because that's a thing that can happen too.
Yeah.
I find in my own relationship, if I'm not very clear on where we're going, what we're doing, and what's happening, then it comes up in Hannah where she's like, okay, I got to take the reins here because I'm not clear.
Right.
I'm not leading the ship in a good way, so she feels like she has to take up space there. Yeah. What do we do when we're not in harmony, as in terms of the polarization?
Yeah. I think it comes up in my relationship because my wife Diana she's very feminine, but she's got a masculine side. She has 2 businesses that she runs, small businesses, and she gets stuff done. And so I can feel sometimes that bleeds into areas that, where she's asserting herself, and I don't like it, and it doesn't feel necessary. And so I try to not take it personally, because on some level I'm like, oh, she doesn't trust me. Like, I'm experiencing it as though she's not surrendered to me. She's not trusting me. I don't like that. Why isn't she, sort of following my lead here? But in fact, it's just habitual. Or like, for instance, she got in a car accident when she was 4 years old, a very traumatic car accident. So she's nervous in the car, which is extremely annoying for me. It's just like, relax, I got it. I've never been in an accident. Don't worry about it. But I have to remember, oh no, I don't take this personally. This is from her history. This actually doesn't have really anything to do with the polarity. This is just like her issues. So to separate those things and have a conversation about it. And because listen, for women for a man to step all the way into their leadership, it's not an easy thing to do. And you have to know yourself, and you have to claim some authority, and you have to take full responsibility. That's a lot, and it takes practice. But also for the woman, surrendering, letting go, that's not an easy thing to do. That takes a lot of fucking courage. I'm just going to follow. I'm just going to trust fully this man. This guy, and we all have our shit. And
we all have our stories, and there's plenty of stories about men in their experience that are,
Exactly. So I don't blame either side for not being perfect in it. But I think it's just a conversation. I mean, getting on the same page about what the expectations are. And the one thing that I always talk about is I'm a big believer in healthy conflict. I'm not somebody who avoids conflict. Like I think that all the fights that Diane and I have are useful in the sense that we come up against something, some edge, some resistance, some fear, some pain, and it comes out. And sometimes it's messy, and sometimes we hurt each other's feelings, or the voices are raised, and we're grumpy around the house for a day or two. And I give that a lot of grace, especially because we've gotten so good at we trust each other there, and I think there's a lot of trust that we're going to come back into connection, and we're each going to take responsibility for our piece in it, and then figure out what the fuck is actually going on, because we know the fight is not about what it's about something else, and it may take a day or two and some hurt feelings to actually get there. And so to just trust in that, don't pathologize every fight you have. You're supposed to be getting along and everything's sunshine and rainbows 24/7. That expectation is completely unrealistic.
Yeah, almost approaching it as a framework to find the usefulness in the disagreement or in the energy that's there.
Exactly.
Yeah, making it useful. And, there's another part for me that I think is helpful, which is tracking. It's like, man, if your partner's going to get nervous getting in the car, that's a good time to have that out in front and lead with that awareness.
That's right.
And so setting ourselves up for success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've just recently come to terms with the fact that, I can be pretty, not perfectly, but there's certain things I'm pretty diligent about, a little rigid, let's say, and she's less so. And sometimes a little spacey. She's an artist, and it used to frustrate the hell out of me. And now I'm like, okay, this is who she is. This is how it is. And I anticipate it now. And it shifted something. I actually allow myself to, almost enjoy it. And that's how I get out ahead of things. But just okay.
You are obsessed with this analysis and looking at what it all means.
Yes, I am.
It must be expressed in all your relationships in some way.
Yeah, it's. I have to actually tone it down. Because I can geek out with my fellow therapists, but not everybody's as interested in it as me. But yeah, it's always it's a puzzle to be solved every time, and the psyche is so incredibly complex, and there's always layer after layer after layer, and so to try to get to the root of it and understand it, for whatever reason, I'm fascinated with it. Yeah.
So let's come out of the relationships with with romantic partners. Let's talk about the men. I see you're doing men's intensives. You participated with us at Convergence 7, where we had over 400 men. We had the youth container. We had the fathers and sons ceremony. What's your memory of that? Do you have any recollection of what you experienced?
Dude, that was awesome. I had no idea what. I saw the pictures and I knew you, and I knew you were the real deal, and so I didn't know what to expect, and I was blown away. Just the organization of everything, but just the deep good intentions. The work that was done was profound. Just the whole container was incredible, and I saw it in the guys, all the men's faces that were there. Just is incredibly powerful experience, and so I've been pushing people towards Sacred Sons since then. I loved it, and I was just in deep appreciation, and of course, just on a personal level, it's just so much fun to be around a group of guys, right? Like, you got your own little, pod of dudes. What were we? Snake? Teams. Yeah, what were we? Snake?
You're the Dragon Spirit.
Oh yeah, Dragon Spirit. That's right.
Yeah.
Dragon Spirit. Yeah. And all that stuff was amazing. It was fun, and the fact that we were at a Boy Scout camp too was so cool. So just the bonding, being with men, the togetherness, the openness, but also the playfulness of it all. There was a lot of play, as well as a lot of deep work, and that felt important. That's the one thing in my workshops. There is play, but it's like, we get together for a weekend. It's pretty fucking hardcore. And
is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
What kind of intensity are you bringing on your weekends? I'm curious.
Well, it's somatic, like Cornergetics. It's physical. So I work with people one-on-one. We work with in groups as well. And I work hard to create a lot of bonding early on, so people feel safe and connected. And I hold things in a very light way. Like, I don't take shit too seriously. But I'm trying to help guys really get into the heart of their darkness, right? The killer energy, and maybe the killer energy that's not integrated, the part of them that wants to get revenge, or is sadistic or cruel, mean, like just that aspect of them, knowing that underneath that is their pain, right? So ultimately, I'm trying to take people to their pain, to their grief, to the longing, to what was lost when they were children, and has been disowned, which will ultimately lead them back to their hearts, back to their power, their true power. But in my experience, at least in the way that I do the work and the way that I experienced it, it's really through the heart of darkness that you get right to the love and the light. So that's where we're going, and it can be uncomfortable, and there can be a lot of resistance around it, just like an ayahuasca ceremony where you're in that second, third hour and you're puking and you don't want to be there, and you want this shit to be over, and you're frustrated, and and then an hour or two later you're like, oh fuck yeah, thank God I got through that, and now I know why I had to go through that. It's kind of that.
Yeah. Why is it important for men to know their darkness?
Well, if they don't know it, they're probably going to be acting it out in unconscious, indirect ways in their life, whether it's against others or against themselves. So making the shadow conscious is the best way to get ahead of it, to combat it. But it's not an easy thing to do, because we have to confront the ugly parts of ourselves that we tend to project onto others. We project it on to our enemies, through judgments and through projections. But taking ownership of that, it's confronting, because we don't want to see ourselves that way, and we don't want to acknowledge the ways that we've hurt people. We've we've all done shit.
Yeah.
And but to know that you didn't do it because you're a quote unquote bad person. You did it because it's an expression of your unresolved pain or disowned fear. And once you understand that, you can then give yourself a lot more grace. And I think we need, as men, to be firm with ourselves. We need to take responsibility. But you also, if you can't heal unless you give yourself a tremendous amount of grace. And I think that's the biggest gift that I've given myself. And it took a long time for me to get here. I'm not saying that I don't ever do it, but I do it a hell of a lot less than I used to. I don't make myself bad. I don't make myself, I'm just like, okay, I made a mistake. I fucked up. Like, I did it, but I don't let myself identify with that because I know it was, as I said, an expression of something deeper. It was a compensation. It was a defense, and it was a habit. It was something that I learned. It's an expression of my trauma. And if I can take responsibility for it and show contrition, genuine contrition and regret and remorse, like, that's the best that I can do. And I that's the most that I can ask of anyone. I can't be in relationship with you, intense relationship with you, if we were, working together all the time and expect you not to have your shit come up and fucking be directed at me at some point. It's going to happen. And I can't, what am I going to end the relationship? It's like, no, I have to give you grace there if you're willing, if you to meet me there, but I have to give that to myself.
Absolutely. And I see it as courage and grace, because to even come into that space, to be willing to go into a space like what you're doing with these men, it's like it takes an immense amount of courage to do that. It's not necessarily a soft thing.
Yeah.
And then the courage and the grace, for me, they complement each other.
I agree, and I forget about that courage part until I'm in the workshop and I'm reminded of how much courage it takes to confront yourself in that way. And I because of the Andrew Tate interview and because of my politics, I'm a little bit known in the right wing, I guess, circles. People who might follow Tate or some of these other characters. And I'm the therapy guy, and so I get a lot of therapy's bullshit and just go do jujitsu, and I don't disagree with that necessarily. There's a lot of therapy that is bullshit, and a lot of therapists that aren't very skilled, and their criticism is it has merit. And
there's some therapy happening unknowingly on those jujitsu mats.
100%.
It is therapeutic.
Absolutely. No, I always say if you're a man and you only have money for jiu-jitsu or therapy, you should start with jiu-jitsu or hire a trainer and go to the gym. Like I'm a firm believer in that. So, but I always say to them, well, you should, if you're so tough, why don't you fucking roll into one of my workshops sometime, tough guy, and see how that is. And they, what I mean? Because it's like, you won't because you're scared.
Yeah.
And
you're in judgment because you're scared.
That's exactly right. And I'm actually next year, I'm coming after those guys in that way. Like I've been kind of soft pedaling, but I'm coming right at the heart of you guys think you're fucking tough. You're actually fucking pussies. And I'm going to call you out and see what happens. As an experiment. See if anybody shows up. They might respond to that.
I think they are. I think there's a David Goggins approach that they're responding to. And maybe it's not relational, work or emotional intelligence, but it's like creating that physical practice, creating accountability, integrity, these type of things that are important. I think you're the perfect guy to do it, to bring it to the relational work. Do you see this work, whether you call it men's work, relational work, do you see it as the leading edge of something that's happening greater? Do you see it breaking into the mainstream?
Liz, I think it's in the mainstream. I mean, I have a bias on who I follow on Twitter and Instagram and all of that. But when I started doing this shit back in the day, 2006, I think. And then I made a documentary in 2008 about a 1-week group therapy retreat. And nobody was doing this shit. Nobody was talking about this. I was like way on the fringe, on the outside. And then all of a sudden, in the last 10 years, it's just exploded. It's everywhere. And it's amazing to me, the conversations that people are having, about this and the kind of workshops that are going on. And I'm generally skeptical of people, because there is a lot of bullshit out there. And I went to 5 years of, training. So I'm like a bit of a snob. But the truth is, there's a lot of fucking amazing people out there, yourself and your organization included. And that is inspiring to see that there is a movement. Is it cracked in the mainstream exactly? Well, I got like guys like Mike Cernovich, million followers on Twitter, kind of a right-wingy dude. He's promoting me, telling his followers, you got to go to Sutcliffe's workshop. And then Andrew Tate, despite the fact that he says he doesn't believe in therapy, has sat down with me twice. Well, why would he do that? If there wasn't some part of him that knew that there was some value, there was some utility in what it is that I'm offering.
Gosh, I'd love to circle these men up on a men's weekend.
Oh my God. Be the best.
And not that they don't have brotherhood, not that they don't do the work on their own ways, but like to really bring those characters. What do you think about bringing Trump and Tate and all those guys that are out on that edge into an intensive?
I would love that. That would be the dream. Yeah. And I think it
bring Elon too. Put Elon in there, man. Yeah. This is going to get good.
Well, look, what is it? Who's the boxer? Jake Paul? Is he the one?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So he does breath work with. There's a guy that he works with who works with Aubrey. I forget his name, but he's he's in our space, and it's not woo woo, but it is what it is, and he's doing it. So that's about as mainstream as you can get. And so I think it's just a matter of time before it cracks into the mainstream.
Actually, as you say that real quick, I think what's actually happening is the subcultures have engulfed the mainstream. I don't think there is a mainstream actually anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I'm not watching commercials. I'm not like in the mainstream of CNN consciousness or Fox News consciousness. I'm getting it from all these other tributaries that have like kind of maybe the idea of mainstream is over.
I think you're right. I think there's dominant culture, certainly. But I think for me, most of the dominant culture is it's being influenced by the people on social media, not the people on an ABC sitcom or on CNN. I don't pay any attention to that anymore. But I think because of that, you find what you're looking for. The subcultures exist, but I think more. That's why I got into this at the beginning, right? Like when I made this documentary, I was like, people have to fucking see this shit.
What was the name of it?
It's called Group docu-series. You can go to groupdocuseries.com, and it's a 11 or 12 part episodes and of a 1-week group therapy retreat, somatic group therapy retreat. And it's intense. It's wild. It's weird and but it's fucking crazy and
transformational.
I think it's transformational. Absolutely. And it's raw. Because I just thought people need to see this. So that's really been the mission I've been on, and that was part of the intention with the Tate interview. And it's like he's pretty mainstream in a way. He's very well known, and so for him to sit down and have that conversation, I thought that was kind of fucking awesome. That he would do that.
It was a great interview too. I mean, I feel like you really held your ground. You really took him into some deeper waters than he wanted to go to, which was great. How did you feel about it?
I thought it was awesome. I mean, I was nervous at the beginning, and then, but I could see that he was nervous, and so which was correct. I thought that's actually correct. He should be nervous. I should be nervous, but I flew out to Romania. I'm in his fucking house. It's Andrew Tate, and I'd sat with him once before over Zoom, but it was, 3 years previous when he was, not really that well known. And now he was like,
did you speak to him out of jail?
He'd just gotten out of jail. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He was still under house arrest. So the cops came in the middle of the interview to check on him, make sure he was there.
You've got to interview Trump. How do we make this happen?
I know.
A therapy. What is the name of the show? You kind of propose as Tate and the therapist on that one. But
Tate,
is there a name
Tate
of your
versus therapist? Yeah.
How about Trump versus the therapist?
Yeah.
Come on, this is a show America needs.
I would love that. I want to interview all these guys. I mean, there's a lot of characters out there that I think would want to sit down for it. And I've been, I've had a few, TikTok star, this guy Candy Ken and Blair White. I had a great interview with Blair White, and there's been some others. So it's happening. More people are curious, like they because they can feel that I'm not out to get them, that I don't have a bad intention, and that I'm just trying to connect. And so I think they are curious. And also in the age of social media, where everybody's trying to generate content, in some way it's like, well, you've got to do something different and interesting at this point. And so, like, sitting down with me or that some therapist, or having that kind of orientation to an interview, I think makes it's unique. And I think you're going to see more and more of it, whether it's from me or from other people.
Just in the same way, like everyone's talking about trauma, collective trauma, generational trauma, that part is in the lexicon. That wasn't there even as early as, the mid 20-teens.
Exactly.
It's really ramped up in an interesting way. So with all the modalities, with the ceremony, with the Red Road, I have to imagine that you believe that in some way, let's say, we could be doing better collectively. Is there a greater, I guess my question is this, yes to the personal work and development. Do you have a greater vision? If you were to circle up Trump and Tate and Elon and other powerful men, do you think this type of relational work could actually be beneficial broadly and impart any real change into this world?
Yeah, I do. I think that I think there's things that as I said earlier, I think there are evolutionary forces that I don't understand, that we don't understand, that are incomprehensible, that are always working. And so I'm not the guy that thinks we can create some kind of utopia once we're all healed. I think trauma is part of the human condition. I think that our gifts come from our trauma. And I think that the shadow is necessary. I think the game is to bring as much consciousness as we can to what it is we're doing, to get out of self-delusion and rationalization. I think this era that we've been in, the scientism and rationality, the Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins type, I think that era is coming to an end. I think we're starting to understand that there are other ways of knowing and reasoning, and that we are primarily driven by emotions. Obviously, I mean, please make the argument that man is rational. Show me the evidence. It does not exist. We are not rational in the way that we want to believe that we are. We're primarily driven by emotions and other things. And so once we come into acceptance of that and of our humanity, and then really, I think what's happening also is, and it's happening for me, is you have to come back to God. You will worship something. You will worship yourself. You will worship money. You will worship fame, success, women, sex, or God. But you're gonna something you are worshiping. And so I know for me, when I worshiped a false god, I got into a lot of trouble. I was literally living in hell. I didn't know it until I bottomed out. But now I really understand that if I don't have, my focus on the great mystery, on that force of intelligence, however you want to think about it, Tunkashila. If I'm not surrendered to that, if I'm not obeying that, you could even say it's your higher self. When I say to people, you have to obey God, they don't like that. They're triggered at the word obey, and it's like, okay, well, would you obey the voice of your highest self? It's like, okay, yeah, I could do that. It's like, well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And so that for me that's the journey that I'm on, is surrendering my rational mind and really trying to let go. And I've had so many experiences of affirming that it's really undeniable at this point for me. I mean, I'm moving to Mexico because I woke up one day with a very, very strong impulse to move to Mexico. I didn't exactly know why. My mind wanted to begin to create reasons for it, but I stopped that and I just asked God. I said, okay, I there's this impulse. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my fear. I don't know if it's why, but show me a sign, and to know that this is the right thing to do. And then I got three insane signs. I won't go into all of them, but if I explained them to you,
they were very meaningful
and apparent and obvious. Like, they couldn't have been more obvious, these synchronicities. So I was like, okay,
that's how the universe does it too.
Exactly.
It shows up almost in a comical way how blatantly obvious the signs can be.
Yeah. And so when you start living from that place, living in the mystery, surrendering to the mystery, it's scary because the mind doesn't know. I'm like, I started working with this trainer and he's like, why are you moving to Mexico? I'm like, I don't know, man. I guess I'm going to find out when I get there. And that's the truth of it, right?
Yeah.
It really is the truth of it. And so I'm trying to really live my life from that place. I don't do it perfectly. My control center is pretty active. But I know the more and more I surrender, the better my life goes.
Yeah. God brought you to Austin. You found your partner and now feeling the call. And earlier you said, the vehicle, there are many vehicles, there are many paths we can take, but ultimately there is one destination, and that is God. It is the primary relationship to self and to source and to our own inner spark. I think that tending to that relationship, the acknowledgement of that relationship, is hugely important. And then to acknowledge that every single other being on this planet has the same connection and the same divine spark.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's playing their role. Because I love to choose sides. And I have chosen sides, especially when I was being attacked for my politics. And I spent a lot of time making other people bad and wrong and stupid. I spent a lot of time talking about how stupid other people were. And most
it makes you feel better, or it does make.
It makes me. I feel good right now just saying that. And
I love it.
It doesn't mean that I'm wrong, but it is a defense. It's a defense against the disappointment and the pain of not feeling seen and understood, and that everybody's where they're at, and that everybody's where they're at is important, and so that this if you're striving towards God and towards goodness, you actually can't find it. You can't get there unless you have the opposing force of evil battling with you. I mean, if you're an MMA fighter, you're defined by your toughest opponent. Muhammad Ali is defined by Joe Frazier. Like, you need that opponent who takes you to your edge, who forces you to dig down deeper and find that part of yourself. And so we need the bad.
And from Joe Frazier's perspective, he is not the villain.
No.
Joe Frazier's whole experience was one of him facing the greatest opponent as well.
That's right.
You know, maybe Goliath, after all, was no villain.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Maybe you know, there's something to that.
No, I absolutely. Well, there's no David without Goliath. So Goliath is integral. So how can you otherize him? Like, you have to honor the role that he played in that drama.
Yes. That is it. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
Honor. You don't have to agree with it. You know, like whatever your Goliath is, or the opponent is, we don't have to agree with it, but there is a sense to honor it. And
sometimes, like, I know I'm the asshole boyfriend in certain women's stories. Right? Like, I'm that character in their story.
Yes.
And I can't get around that. And it's true for them. It's not defining of all of who I am, obviously, but in some way, like, I played that role for them, and it was necessary.
And then you get to honor that role.
That's right.
Even get to honor ourselves in all the roles that we play. I think that's a good piece to leave with, to honor ourselves in the many roles that we play.
Yes. Which I think is connected to this idea of not striving to be good, but to strive for, like, authenticity, to strive for truth. And that is good. That is what is good. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. You know, I came here looking for rationality and to make sense of a crazy world. And I found a deeply devout man, a man of God. He brought me to God. You know, I thought maybe there were some more logistical, political changes necessary, but no. It turns out we have to get connected. We got to play. Actually, we got to play maybe just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Bring some more of the element of the lightness, and then turn back to God. Into the truth of that, like what you're saying. With that, Mr. Sutcliffe, is there any final message that you would like to leave with the people who are listening?
I think we said it all. We said a lot. We said enough, but I appreciate the conversation. It's always good to connect with you. I wish we could connect more. I wish I lived in San Diego, or you lived in. Were you in San Diego?
I'm in San Diego, California.
Oh, okay, but I didn't know if you'd left there or you moved. Did you? Are you still? Didn't you?
We did Maui for a year and a half.
Oh, you did. Oh,
yeah. During while you were in Idlewild, I was in Maui for about a year and a half.
Oh, nice, man.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
we had a little community. There was nobody on the island. It was a very special moment in time.
Wow.
But yeah, here with the family in San Diego, Hannah and I have 3 children together.
It's amazing, man.
Isn't it amazing?
It's
what
amazing.
life has to offer us?
I know. I remember when you guys first met. That's when I met you.
Yes.
You guys had just met.
Yes. It was, I mean, I was coming out of it myself and in that time. And yeah, the journey that I've been on is largely driven by my success and my failures in relationship.
Yeah.
Beckoning me to become the version of myself that I continue to think that I am, even after all the mistakes. You know. But yeah, man, blessings on your move, blessings on the marriage and everything you got going on. We will be looking for those big interview drops. I hope to see more.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate you, brother. With that, David Sutcliffe. I'll throw everything in the show notes where they can find you. Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons, Route Family. Peace.